Welcome to day 8 of my Valentine series. Today we will be painting a Valentine hot sauce bottle. I'm removing the harsh pencil lines of my simple sketch with a kneaded eraser. And then I'm going to start off with just the label of the bottle, and I'm using the buff titanium but heavily diluted. I'm going to put a little bit more of concentrated paint on the outsides of the bottle as well as the peaks. Next, I'm going to work on the little rim underneath the cap, and I mixed some Payne's gray with a dot of cerulean blue to create this nice silver tone. I'll use this same tone to darken the shadow area on the labels. I'm using a damp brush to blend out the harsh edges every time I do a shadow or an outline. Now I'm moving on to the red portion of the bottle. I'll use Pyrrole Scarlet, a little bit diluted, for my first layer, and outline the space and fill it in. Because I'm making the cap and the neckband green, I can use this same Pyrrole Scarlet as an undertone shadow on the right side. So I'll use this heavily diluted and just shade in the right portions of the cap and the neckband using a damp brush to blend it out. I'm using the same red for the chili peppers and also as an undertone underneath the green stems. With the heart, I'm doing the most concentrated paint on the outline, and I'll be using a damp brush to blend towards the middle. Now it's time to completely dry it before going in with a diluted sap green as our first layer for the mid-tone in the shadow and also filling in the label and the neckband. This same sap green color can be used to create dimension in the bottle, so I'm putting some extra shadows underneath the cap and then extra shadows leaning down to the bottom of the bottle on both sides. I'm trying to create more of a rounded look in the bottle, so I'm using the same shadow color to create some dimension in the front. I'm using a tad darker shade of this sap green to create a little bit of a darker shadow on the bottle cap as well as the tops of the chili peppers and the inside of the heart. And while this layer is drying, I can go back and touch up the parts that I already painted and make them a little bit darker. This glazing effect is a great way to continue to add shadow, add dimension, but make it look more gradual, and then also helping to blend it out with the damp brush. Once you're done with that layer of the sap green, then completely dry it before going over all of it with the Pyro Scarlet. This will deepen the red, but it would also help as a mid layer between the first layer of shadow and your final result. The final shadow is a mix between the sap green and the Pyro Scarlet that we already have on our palette. It will create a deeper red that we'll use on top of the sap green portions and blend it out with a damp brush. And whatever's left on your brush, you can use that to fill in the hearts on the label. This is just waking up that area before going back in and completely filling it in with the Pyro Scarlet layer. The cast shadow color is created by adding a little bit of the cerulean blue to the silver mixture that we made earlier and heavily diluting it. I like keeping more of a defined cast shadow, so I'm not going to overwork this too much, and I'll just put in one first layer before drying it completely. I have a mix of yellow ochre and burnt sienna on my palette, and this is the shade I'll use to outline the bottle. I'm using a very thin brush and I'm being careful not to make the line too thick. In areas where it does seem a little bit thicker, I try to blend it out with a damp brush. I'm also doing all of the little details in terms of the cap, the neckband, and the label. Because this shade is in the same family group as my darker colors, I can use this to fill in any shadows that I feel like could be a little bit deeper. After completely drying it, it's time to move on to highlight. For the bottle cap, I'm making my lines really thin just to outline the top of the cap, and I'll blend it out with a damp brush, making sure that it doesn't get too wide. I'm also adding a thin white line heading towards the bottom of the bottle, and this is the same highlight that I'm going to use throughout. I'm keeping my damp brush at the ready and I'm going back in repeatedly just to soften that line before it dries. It's also really helpful to use your damp brush as a way to extend the white line that you've already put. It really helps it to blend away instead of coming to an abrupt stop. I want to put more of an accentuated highlight in the front, so I put a thicker line and I'm blending it out with a damp brush. I'm skipping the label as I go down with the highlight, but I put some accents on the bottom of the bottle and also on the left side. Once you feel like you're happy with all of the highlight areas and that you've blended it out, then you're done. And this is how it looks in natural light. I hope you enjoyed painting with me, and I'll see you in the next video.